I was sitting in the old, cold doctor's office, surrounded by the buzz of distant conversations, the soft beeping of machines, and the dull hum of fluorescent lights. It was an unusually warm morning, and yet I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. My phone buzzed on the chair beside me, breaking the monotony. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I picked it up anyway. "Mom," said a voice I could almost never forget, yet today sounded so different. It was my daughter, Lucy, she sounded. Distant, detached. "We're going on a trip tomorrow," she continued, her words flat and emotionless. "I sold your house and the car. I needed the money. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Bye." And just like that, she hung up. No goodbye. No empathy. I sat there frozen. Her words hit harder than 1,000 storms. I had given everything to raise her. 47 years of love, sacrifices, and now, in a heartbeat, she had thrown me aside like an old, worn-out coat. But I didn't cry. I didn't shout. Instead, I took a deep breath and smiled. Why? Because there was something Lucy didn't know. I wasn't as helpless as she thought. I am Eleanor Jackson, 68 years old, and I've spent the last 2 decades of my life believing I knew my daughter. But that was before that phone call. 6 months ago, I lost my husband, Carl. It was a heart attack, sudden and unexpected. It happened one lazy Saturday morning, just as we sat down to breakfast. Carl made me coffee, served it with a smile, and kissed me like every other morning. But that kiss turned out to be the last. Lucy, bless her heart, had been a great support at first. She visited often, helped me with the funeral arrangements, even got me to see a doctor. "You need to take care of yourself, Mom," she'd say, as though it was out of genuine concern. At least, I thought so. But now I understood it was all for her benefit, not mine. Our beach house, the one Carl and I bought when we were young, was more than just a home. It was our sanctuary. Every summer, we would return there with Lucy, creating memories as if time itself had no say in our happiness. Lucy brought her boyfriends, her husband, Daniel. I cooked, cleaned, and kept everything running smoothly. It was always supposed to be that way. Until now, the beach house, the car, the memories, Lucy had sold them without a second thought. I should have been devastated, but instead, I felt an odd sense of calm. You see, there was something Lucy didn't know. 3 days before Carl passed away, he had handed me an envelope. "If something happens to me," he said, "put this in your drawer. Don't open it until you feel ready." I hadn't even looked at it after the funeral, too busy with grief and arrangements. But there it was, waiting for me when I got home that day. I walked out of the doctor's office, not hearing a word the nurse was saying. I didn't even remember getting on the bus. My thoughts were consumed by that envelope. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Lucy thought she had left me with nothing. But little did she know, Carl had a plan for me. A plan that would change everything. I arrived home to silence. The house felt emptier than usual, despite the years of memories it held. It had always been Carl and me, building a life together, brick by brick, moment by moment. Now, it felt like a ghost of what it once was. But I had something Carl had left behind, something I had all but forgotten about until now. I walked straight to the bedroom, where the envelope still sat on the dresser drawer. My fingers trembled as I picked it up, noticing Carl's neat handwriting on the front, "For Eleanor. Only when you're ready," as I sat on the edge of our bed. I could almost feel Carl sitting beside me, just like he always did when I needed advice or comfort. But today, I wasn't seeking comfort. I was seeking answers. The envelope held several sheets of paper, legal documents, bank statements, and a letter written by Carl himself. I took a deep breath before unfolding the letter, Carl's familiar handwriting filling the page. "Eleanor, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything while I was alive. I wanted to protect you from worries, but now it's time you know the truth." I could feel my heart racing as I read on. He went on to explain that, over the years, he had invested our savings in properties and stocks, quietly building wealth without me ever suspecting. We didn't just have the beach house. We owned 6 other properties, including an apartment building, and several shares in companies worth more than I could ever imagine. Carl had never told me about any of this. You've always had everything, Eleanor. But now I want you to know that it's all yours. My hands shook as I looked at the deeds, the bank statements, and the investment portfolios. I had no idea Carl had kept such a well-organized portfolio. The quiet bus driver I had known for 45 years had secretly built an empire. But there was one part of the letter that truly caught my attention. The apartment building, the one Lucy and Daniel lived in. I had no idea that Carl had bought it years ago and had been quietly collecting rent from it. It was all in the name of a company I didn't know about. And to my surprise, I was now the sole beneficiary of that company. I was rich. More than I ever could have imagined. But what did Lucy know? How could she have thought that I was destitute? It seemed impossible, but there it was in black and white. The last thing Carl had left me was a fortune that could change my life. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Lucy again, her voice strained. "Mom, how are you holding up?" she asked. The sudden warmth in her voice almost made me sick. "I'm fine," I replied, my voice as calm as I could manage. "What about you? How's everything going?" "Oh, it's been crazy," Lucy said, though I could hear the tension in her tone. "We've transferred the money from the house sale into your account. It's not much, but it'll be enough for you to get by." I couldn't help but laugh. "Not much," she said. They had sold the beach house for a fraction of what it was worth. It didn't matter though. I was in control now, but Lucy continued, unaware of what I had just discovered. We're going to Europe soon. Edward has a business opportunity over there, and we need to invest quickly. It's going to be great, Mom. You'll be fine here, won't you?" The irony hit me like a freight train. They had sold everything I owned to fund their business opportunity, yet they didn't know that I was sitting on a fortune. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how wrong she was, but I held it together. "I'll manage, Lucy. Have a good trip." "Be safe," I said. "Of course, Mom, we love you. Don't worry about a thing." And just like that, the line went dead. The coldness of her goodbye stung more than I cared to admit. I sat back in Carl's chair, trying to process everything. The truth was sinking in slowly, but it was clear now. They thought they had stripped me of everything, my home, my car, my dignity. But what they didn't know was that I had everything I needed to take back what was mine. I wasn't about to sit idly by and watch them squander everything Carl had worked so hard for. No, I was going to do something about this. But I had to be smart about it. I wasn't going to confront Lucy just yet. For now, I would let her believe that she had left me with nothing. I would play along, just a little longer. After all, what was the point of showing my cards too soon? The days passed in a blur. I went through the motions of my ordinary life, the grocery store, the small neighborhood cafe, the usual routine that everyone expected of me. I could feel the eyes of the neighbors on me, pitying me, whispering behind their doors. "Poor Eleanor, abandoned by her daughter, left with nothing," they'd say. But they had no idea what I knew. I took my time, savoring the quiet, the solitude, and the satisfaction of knowing that everything was about to change one afternoon. I went to the post office to pick up some mail. The clerk handed me an envelope I hadn't been expecting. It was from my lawyer, Thomas Peterson, the man who had helped Carl with some legal matters years ago. I hadn't heard from him since Carl's passing, but there it was. I opened the envelope carefully, not wanting to ruin the crisp paper inside. The letter inside was brief, but to the point. "Eleanor, I have some news regarding the properties. Please call me at your earliest convenience. I believe it's time we begin taking action." A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't expected to feel This way, but the weight of what I was about to do was settling in. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my life, and the respect that Lucy had taken for granted. I dialed his number immediately. The phone rang a few times before he picked up. Mrs. Jackson. His voice was warm, but professional. How are you? I'm well, Thomas, I replied, my voice steady. You mentioned taking action. What do you suggest? I've looked through the documents you mentioned, and I believe we can start the process of recovering your properties. There are a few legal steps to take, but we can begin with the beach house and the apartment building. It's going to be a bit of a process, but it's all doable. I paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. I want to move forward with this. Thomas, I've had enough. I've been quiet long enough. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Understood, Mrs. Jackson. I'll prepare the necessary paperwork. We'll proceed discreetly. I'll make sure the process is as seamless as possible. I hung up the phone with a sense of determination flooding through me. It was time to take control. The next few days were filled with visits to the lawyer's office, meetings to finalize the recovery of the beach house, and meticulous planning. But I kept up appearances. I smiled at the neighbors, exchanged pleasantries, and acted like the helpless widow they thought I was. But deep down, I was beginning to feel something I hadn't in a long time. Power, real power. The power to take back what was mine. And then, just when I thought I had everything under control, Lucy called again. Mom, how's everything? She asked, her voice almost as sweet. I could tell something was off, but I didn't let it show. I'm doing well, dear. We're in Europe now. Things are going great, but I wanted to talk to you about something. We sold the beach house, but we've only deposited a small portion into your account. I know it's not much, but it should help you get by. My fingers tightened around the phone. I appreciate it, Lucy, but I'll manage. It's not the money, it's the principle. Lucy didn't respond immediately, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice. Of course, Mom, but don't worry. We're here for you. We've got everything under control. Don't forget, you've always been a part of this family. I wanted to scream at her. How dare she say that? She wasn't concerned about me. She was concerned about keeping her grip on what she thought was hers. But I didn't let my anger show. Instead, I smiled softly to myself and said, I'm glad you're doing well, Lucy. But remember, family isn't just about money. It's about love, respect. There was an awkward silence on the line before she hastily replied, Of course, Mom. Love you. The line went dead, and I stared at the phone in my hand. I wasn't angry, though. No, I was playing the game, and I was winning. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought I was helpless, abandoned, and weak, but she didn't know the truth. I could feel the shift inside me, the quiet storm that had been building since Carl's death. Lucy had no idea how much power I now held. I spent the following days quietly orchestrating the next phase of my plan. I contacted a few trusted individuals, a real estate agent, a financial advisor, to begin the process of taking back the apartment building that Lucy had no right to sell. I knew it would take time, but it didn't matter. Patience was a virtue I had learned well over the years. And then, one evening, as I was sitting at the dining table, staring out the window at the night sky, a thought struck me. I needed to act faster. There was a part of me, a quiet, protective part, that felt an overwhelming urge to protect Lucy. Despite everything, I still loved her. But I needed her to understand the consequences of her actions. I needed her to learn the value of respect, love, and family. I picked up the phone and dialed Thomas Peterson's number again. Thomas, I want to add something else to the list. It's time we deal with the apartment building where Lucy is living. The days dragged on, each one blending into the other, as I continued with the quiet work of reclaiming what was rightfully mine. But there was an element of satisfaction now, a quiet pride in knowing I was in control. It wasn't about the money. No, it was about the principle, about what was right. And it was about making sure Lucy understood the gravity of her choices. I continued my regular visits to Thomas's office, reviewing documents, signing papers, and steadily taking back ownership of my properties. It was a slow, deliberate process, but that was how I preferred it. I wasn't in any rush. Time was on my side. Lucy continued to call, each time her voice more uncertain. She would ask about my well-being, but there was a hint of desperation behind her words, as though she was trying to hold onto something that was slipping away. But I didn't let her see that I knew what was really going on. I kept my voice steady, reassuring her that I was fine, that I was getting by. I even laughed once, pretending to be as helpless as she thought I was. But behind closed doors, I was making moves, subtle, careful moves. Every call to Thomas, every email to the real estate agents, was a step toward taking back what Lucy had stolen. The beach house was mine once again, and now, the apartment building where she lived was in my sights one afternoon. As I sat in my living room sipping tea, I glanced out the window and saw Lucy's car parked outside my house. She hadn't called ahead, which was unlike her. I frowned, wondering what she was up to. She was acting out of character lately, distant, and yet there was a shift in her energy. She was trying to play the part of the dutiful daughter, but I could see through it. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it before she could knock. She was standing there, shifting from one foot to the other, looking uncomfortable. For a moment, she looked like a stranger to me, someone I barely recognized. "Mom," she began, her voice softer than usual, but there was something off about her. "I need to talk to you. Can I come in?" "Of course," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated before speaking again, her eyes avoiding mine. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and I realize now that I made some really bad choices. I wasn't thinking about you. I was just thinking about myself, about what I thought I needed. I didn't answer right away. I just let her talk, watching her carefully. She seemed smaller somehow, more vulnerable than the confident woman who had walked out on me months ago. I could see the cracks forming in her facade, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a pang of something resembling pity. Not sympathy, but pity. She had no idea what she was truly up against. "I thought I was doing what was best for me," she continued, her voice cracking. "But now I see I've lost everything that really mattered." I looked at her, my expression unreadable. "And what exactly have you lost, Lucy?" She shifted uncomfortably, her eyes flickering toward the floor. "I've lost you. I've lost the family. I don't have anything left. Daniel left me. He took off to Europe with that girl, and now I don't even know where he is. I thought he was the answer to everything, but he's just a liar." I nodded slowly, allowing her words to sink in. There was an edge of regret in her voice now, and it sounded genuine, but it wasn't enough. "Not yet. You always had everything, Lucy," I said softly, "but you couldn't see it because you were blinded by your own desires. You took from me without thinking about the consequences, and now look where we are." Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back. "I know I was wrong. I don't know how to fix this. I can't undo what I did, and I don't know what to do now." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't about giving her what she wanted, that had never been the point. It was about teaching her the value of what she had thrown away. And that lesson was far from over. "Lucy," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "you've made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. I've spent my life making sacrifices for you, loving you unconditionally, but you can't just take, and expect everything to be handed back to you when things go wrong. You have to understand the consequences of your actions." "I know, Mom," she whispered. "I know, I was selfish. I thought I could escape everything, but now I can't even escape myself. The silence hung heavy in the room, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the weight of her choices crashing down on her, but I wasn't ready to offer her forgiveness just yet. Not until she truly understood what she had lost. "Why are you here, Lucy?" I asked quietly. "What do you want from me now?" Her gaze met mine, and for the first time in months, she didn't look like the cold, calculating daughter I had come to resent. She looked a human, vulnerable. "I want to fix things," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive me, not yet. But I want to make it right, Mom. I want to try and build something again. I don't know what, but something." I looked at her for a long time, considering her words carefully. Then, finally, I spoke. "You can try, Lucy, but first, you need to learn the value of what you took from me. You need to learn that this is not something that can be fixed overnight. You can't just walk back in and expect everything to be the way it was. It doesn't work like that." She nodded, tears finally falling freely from her eyes. "I know, Mom, I know." The days after Lucy's visit passed quietly, but my mind was anything but still. I could feel the weight of the decisions I'd made pressing down on me. I wasn't just taking back what was mine. I was teaching my daughter a lesson she would never forget. But lessons like these take time. I spent the next few days on the phone, coordinating the recovery of the properties. The beach house had been officially returned to me, and I was working through the legal steps to regain control of the apartment building, the one where Lucy and Daniel lived. I knew this would be the hardest part, not because it was complicated legally, but because it would change everything for Lucy. But there was more I needed to do. I needed to start showing Lucy the full consequences of her actions, not just the material loss, but the deeper emotional and psychological cost. I had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. It wasn't about making her suffer. It was about giving her the space to grow and understand the responsibility she had neglected for so long. I called Thomas Peterson again, as I had nearly every day for the past week. "Thomas," I said when he answered, "it's time to begin phase 2. I want you to put the paperwork in motion for the apartment building. Make sure everything is in my name, and let's start the legal process to notify Lucy and Daniel that they need to vacate." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Jackson?" he asked carefully. "I'm sure," I replied, my voice firm. "Lucy needs to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. I've given her enough chances. Now she has to face the reality of what she's done." "Understood," Thomas said, sounding as though he were preparing for something big. "I'll begin the process immediately. I'll also prepare the eviction notice. It will be discreet, of course, but it'll be clear." "Good," I said. "Thank you, Thomas. I'll wait for your update." After hanging up, I sat back in the chair Carl had once sat in, looking out the window at the quiet street. I knew Lucy would be devastated. She was so used to getting everything handed to her, believing that nothing could truly be taken from her. But now it was all slipping through her fingers. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. Now the game was in motion. That night, after dinner, I received a call. It was Lucy. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "Mom, I don't know what to do. Everything's falling apart. I thought I could get back on my feet, but Daniel's gone. I can't afford to pay the bills. I'm behind on the rent. The bank's calling, and I don't know what to do." I leaned back in the chair, listening to her words. It was as though she thought I could just swoop in and fix everything. She still didn't get it. She still hadn't learned. "Lucy," I said, my voice calm but firm, "this is what happens when you don't take responsibility for your actions. You took everything from me, the house, the car, the memories. You sold things you didn't have the right to sell, and now you're reaping the consequences. It's hard, but this is part of growing up. The world doesn't always give you a second chance." She fell silent, the sobs coming through the phone. I'm so sorry, Mom, I didn't think. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. Lucy, I said softly, it's not just about me. It's about you. You've lost something much more important than a house or a car. You've lost your way. And now you have to find it again, but you have to do it on your own. But Mom, I don't know if I can do this without you. I paused before answering, my heart aching slightly for the girl I once knew, the daughter I had loved with all my heart. Lucy, you've never needed me more than you do right now, and I've always been here for you. But I can't do it for you. You have to do this on your own. The line went quiet again, and I could hear her trying to hold back tears. I wanted to comfort her, but I knew it wasn't time for that. She needed to feel this, truly understand what it meant to make mistakes and have to live with them. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't expect you to fix this for me. I know I've hurt you, but I want to make it right. I want to start over. Mom, I want to prove to you that I can do better. I wasn't sure if she was saying that because she believed it or because she was hoping I would give her the answer she wanted. But I wasn't going to give in. Not this time. Prove it to yourself first, Lucy, and then we'll talk. The phone call ended there, but something had changed. There was a shift in her voice, a small but significant moment of self-awareness. Maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to see things for what they were. The days following Lucy's phone call were a blur of quiet tension. She called again, and again, each time more desperate, more uncertain. But each time, I could hear a shift in her tone, a faint, growing realization that things weren't going to magically fix themselves. She was being forced to face the mess she had made, and it was harder than she ever imagined. I watched from a distance, careful to maintain my calm. My role, for now, was not to rescue her, but to let her feel the weight of the choices she had made. It was hard, watching her struggle, but I knew it was necessary. Lucy had to hit rock bottom to truly understand the value of everything she had taken for granted. Only then would she begin to rebuild herself, but there was more work to be done. I was still playing my part, the helpless, grieving widow, and I was doing it well. The neighbors still looked at me with pity, offering me their sympathies whenever they saw me. They couldn't know the truth, not yet. Not until Lucy had learned what she needed to learn. One afternoon, as I sat on the front porch, sipping tea and listening to the sounds of the neighborhood, I saw a familiar car pull into the driveway. It was Lucy's. She stepped out, carrying a small duffel bag, looking tired and worn. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken from days of sleepless nights. She had come to a crossroads. She didn't know what to do next, but she knew she couldn't continue down the path she was on. She hesitated before walking to the door, then knocked softly. I stood up, my heart momentarily skipping a beat. I opened it slowly, pretending to be surprised to see her. Mom, Lucy said quietly, avoiding my gaze. I don't know where else to go. I thought I had it all figured out, but now I see I was wrong. I'm sorry for everything. I don't know how to fix it, but I need your help. Please, just for a little while. I don't have anywhere else to turn. I studied her for a moment, my expression unreadable. I could see the desperation in her eyes. She was no longer the confident woman who had once walked away from me without a second thought. Now she was broken, humbled, and vulnerable. Lucy, I said, my voice calm but firm, you made your choice. You chose Daniel over me. You chose money over family. And now you want me to fix it, to rescue you from the mess you've created. But that's not how this works. You can't keep running to people to save you when things go wrong. Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out as though to hold on to me. I'm not asking you to fix everything, Mom. I just need a little time. A little space to figure things out. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to soften. I couldn't let her think that things could go back to the way they were. She needed to understand that this time, there were no shortcuts. You can stay, I said finally, my voice steady. But only if you promise to respect the rules of this house. "You've lost your way, Lucy, but I can't help you find it unless you're willing to help yourself first." She looked at me, her tears falling freely now, and nodded. "I promise, Mom, I just need time. I'll do whatever it takes." I stepped aside, allowing her to enter. But in my heart, I knew that this wasn't a simple act of forgiveness. This was part of the plan, part of the process. It was time to let Lucy experience the reality of what she had lost, and hopefully, she would finally understand the value of what had been right in front of her all along. Over the next few days, I watched Lucy closely. She settled into the house again, but there was a difference now. She wasn't the confident, entitled woman who had once demanded everything from me. Now she was quieter, more reflective, and less certain of her place in the world. It was painful to see her like this, but it was also necessary. I wasn't going to make things easy for her, and she was starting to realize that. Every time she asked for help, I reminded her of the consequences of her actions. I didn't offer pity. I offered lessons. She tried to find a job, but her legal issues were still looming large. Her credit was ruined, and no one seemed willing to hire her with the weight of her debt hanging over her head. She became more withdrawn, more desperate, and each time she came to me for reassurance, I let her know that the only way out of this mess was through hard work and responsibility. One evening, she sat down beside me at the kitchen table. She had been quiet all day, but now there was a look in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. It was determination. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice steady. "About everything. About you. And about what I've done. I was wrong, Mom. I treated you like you were just a burden. I thought I could have everything, but now I see that everything I've done has only made things worse." I looked at her for a long moment before responding. "Lucy, you've hurt a lot of people with your choices, but the most important person you've hurt is yourself. You've lost sight of what really matters. You thought you could buy happiness, buy freedom, but it doesn't work that way." Her hands trembled as she folded them in front of her, her gaze fixed on the table. I know. I thought I could fix it by running away, but I was wrong. And now I need to start over. But I don't know how." I looked at her, my heart softening just a little, but my resolve still firm. "The first step, Lucy, is understanding that you can't fix everything in a day. It's a process. It's going to take time. And you have to be willing to face the consequences, not just for yourself, but for everyone you've hurt along the way." She nodded slowly, and for the first time in a long time. I saw a flicker of something real in her eyes, the desire to change. The desire to make things right. The days grew colder as winter settled in. The chill in the air mirrored the distance that still existed between Lucy and me. She was living with me now, but the truth was, she was still the same person who had left me behind months ago. I hadn't fully forgiven her, and maybe I never would, but something had shifted. She was starting to see the consequences of her actions, and she knew it wasn't going to be easy to fix. She began to settle into a new rhythm in the house, a rhythm that felt foreign to her. She wasn't used to hard work. She wasn't used to doing things for herself. And every day that passed, I saw the growing weight of her situation on her shoulders. She spent hours on the phone, trying to work out payment plans with creditors, calling the bank to fix her ruined credit. I watched her from a distance, knowing that she had to figure this out on her own. There was a part of me that wanted to swoop in and fix everything, to hand her a way out, but I knew better. She had to face this on her own. One evening, as I sat in the living room reading, I overheard her talking to someone on the phone. I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose, but her voice, raised with frustration, cut through the quiet. "No, you don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't have the money to pay it all right now. I'm trying to find a job, but it's not easy. My credit's ruined. What else can I do?" I could hear the panic in her voice. It wasn't just the debt that had her shaken. It was the realization that the life she had taken for granted, The life of comfort, of privilege, was gone. She had nothing left but her own hands, and she didn't know how to use them. When she hung up, I saw her standing by the window, staring out into the night. The weight of the situation was too much for her, and for a moment I felt a wave of pity. But I quickly pushed it away. Pity wouldn't help her now. She turned and walked into the kitchen, where I sat waiting, as if I had been expecting her. "Mom," she said quietly, her voice almost breaking, "I can't do this. I've called every place I can think of. No one's hiring me. I don't know how to fix all of this. I don't know what to do." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in a long time. She wasn't the same woman who had walked out on me without a second thought. She was different now, broken, yes, but also learning. Slowly but surely, she was beginning to understand the weight of what she had done. "Lucy," I said softly, "you can't fix this in one day. You can't buy your way out of this. What you need to do is stop running. Stop trying to escape the consequences of your actions. You've made mistakes, but now you need to face them head on." She looked at me, her eyes full of tears. I know I can't fix it all at once. But I don't know where to start. I don't know how to rebuild everything I've lost." I sighed deeply, feeling the familiar ache of a mother's heart. "The first thing you need to do is stop blaming others. Stop blaming Daniel. Stop blaming me. You need to take responsibility for what you've done. Only then will you be able to rebuild." She sank down into the chair across from me, her face buried in her hands. "I ruined everything, Mom, everything. I thought I could have it all, but I lost it all in the process. I was so focused on getting what I wanted that I didn't even stop to think about what I was doing to you, to us." I could feel the weight of her words. She wasn't the same person who had sold everything out from under me. But there was more to this process. It wasn't enough for her to just apologize. She needed to show me that she understood the depth of her mistakes. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. "You're right. You lost a lot. And so did I. But what you don't understand is that you didn't just lose money or things. You lost respect. You lost trust. You didn't just betray me, Lucy, you betrayed yourself. And now you have to rebuild that trust, not just with me, but with yourself." She looked up, her eyes wide. "How do I do that? How do I start over when everything's fallen apart?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "You start by taking small steps. You find a job, no matter how small, and you stick with it. You pay your debts, one by one, and you work hard for what you earn. You stop looking for a way out and start looking for a way forward." Lucy sat quietly for a moment, the weight of my words settling into her bones. Finally, she spoke. "I'll do it, Mom. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to live like this anymore. I can't." I nodded, knowing that this was just the beginning. There was no quick fix, no magic solution. But Lucy was starting to see it. She was starting to see that rebuilding her life would take time, effort, and sacrifice. And she was finally willing to put in the work. The winter weeks passed in a blur, each one blending into the next. Lucy was doing her best, though it was clear that the weight of her past mistakes was a heavy burden. She had started looking for work in earnest, not the cushy job she once assumed would fall into her lap, but the kind of work she had never considered before: retail, waitressing, anything that could bring in a paycheck. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of something resembling determination in her eyes. It wasn't just the desperation I had seen before. No, this time, it was the quiet resolve of someone who had finally accepted the reality of her situation. I tried not to let my guard down. I had no illusions that Lucy's journey was complete. But the small victories, the baby steps, were beginning to add up. One evening, after she'd gotten home from her shift at a local cafe, Lucy collapsed into the chair across from me at the kitchen table, her face tired but relieved. She hadn't said much about her day, she rarely did, but I could see the exhaustion in her posture. This wasn't the life she had imagined for herself, but she was living it. And that, in itself, was something. "You look tired," I said, my voice soft but matter of fact. She nodded, rubbing her eyes. "It's a lot harder than I thought, but I think I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to see that the world doesn't owe me anything. I have to work for everything." I studied her for a moment, considering her words. There was a vulnerability in her admission, but also something stronger, a hint of growth. "You're learning, Lucy," I said quietly. "But it's more than just working for money. You have to work for your dignity, your peace of mind. And that takes time. It takes consistency." She nodded, though she didn't meet my eyes. "I know, Mom, I didn't realize how far I'd gone until it was too late." I stayed quiet, letting the moment settle between us. It wasn't often that Lucy was so open, but I knew this was the beginning of something important. She was no longer in denial about her actions, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to say anything more. That night, she came to me after her shower, a piece of paper clutched in her hand. She had a strange look on her face, a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Mom," she said, her voice shaky, I have something to show you." I looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "What is it?" She hesitated before unfolding the paper. "It's a job application." I filled it out. "For a full-time position at a retail store. I don't know if I'll get it, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying. I'm not giving up." I took the paper from her, looking over it briefly. It wasn't much, just a part-time sales associate position, but it was a step forward. And it was a step Lucy had taken on her own, without asking for favors or hoping someone would fix things for her. I looked at her, my heart swelling with something I hadn't felt in a long time, pride. It wasn't that I thought everything was fixed, far from it. But this was progress. Real progress. And it was something I hadn't seen from her in years. "You're doing well, Lucy," I said, my voice steady. "But don't stop here. This is only the beginning." She smiled faintly, still unsure of herself, but willing to listen. "I know I don't expect things to change overnight, but I'll keep trying. I have to." She turned to leave, but then stopped in the doorway. "Thank you, Mom," she said quietly, "for letting me stay. For not giving up on me." I nodded, though I didn't say anything. The truth was, I hadn't given up on her, not yet. But I had learned that sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them find their own way. And Lucy was starting to do that, bit by bit. As the weeks went on, Lucy's commitment to rebuilding herself only grew stronger. She had learned the hard way that nothing in life comes easily. And though I still kept my distance, watching her carefully, I couldn't help but feel that something had changed. The woman who had walked out on me months ago was not the same woman who sat across from me now. She had faced her mistakes, and while she wasn't perfect, she was trying. I knew that there would be more setbacks, more struggles, but for the first time, I had hope. Hope that Lucy could rebuild her life from the rubble she had created. And maybe, just maybe, she would understand that true wealth wasn't in money or possessions, but in the people we love and the trust we build with them. Lucy's transformation wasn't immediate, but it was happening. Each day, she seemed a little more committed to making things right, to doing the hard work it took to rebuild her life. And though I couldn't bring myself to completely forgive her just yet, I saw the quiet struggle in her eyes. The determination to change that had eluded her for so long. She had gotten the job at the retail store, a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Her shifts were long, and the pay wasn't much, but she was learning the value of earning an honest wage. I watched her come home each night, exhausted but proud. And with each passing day, the weight of her actions seemed to sink in a little deeper. The woman who had once treated me as a burden was slowly becoming someone I could respect, but it wasn't just about the job. It was about the things Lucy hadn't yet faced, the debt she had run up, and the damage she had done to both herself and to those around her. I knew the day would come when the full extent of her mistakes would hit her like a ton of bricks. I had been quietly watching the situation unfold, making sure she wasn't running from the consequences. I knew that soon, those consequences would come knocking at her door. It started with a letter. One evening, just as Lucy was getting home from work, the mail arrived. I saw her flip through the stack of envelopes, her face lighting up when she saw one from the bank. But then, as she tore open the envelope and scanned the contents, her expression shifted. "Mom," she called, her voice tight. "There's something wrong. I thought I paid off the credit card bill last month, but they're saying I'm late. I don't understand. I've been keeping track." I stood up, my heart sinking. I had a feeling this was coming. The truth was that Lucy had only begun to scratch the surface of her debt, and now the full weight of it was coming down on her. I walked over, peering at the letter in her hands. The bank was demanding a large payment, citing missed payments from the last several months. Lucy's face paled as she looked at me, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't know how this happened," she whispered. "I thought I had it all under control. I've been working so hard. I don't know where the money went." I didn't say anything at first. Part of me wanted to tell her that this was the natural consequence of her choices, that this was what happens when you live beyond your means and think that money can solve everything. But instead, I said, "Lucy, you can't keep running from your problems. This is part of the process. It's the reality of what happens when you don't face your debts head on. But you're not alone. You can fix this, but it's going to take more than just working hard. It's going to take responsibility." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "I know, Mom, but how do I fix it? Where do I even start?" I reached out, placing a hand on hers. "You start by facing it. You've been running from it for too long. But now you need to take action. Call the bank, explain the situation, and see if you can set up a payment plan. You'll have to make sacrifices, but that's what it takes to get back on track." Lucy stared at the letter for a long moment, then nodded, her expression hardening with resolve. "I'll do it. I'll fix it. I won't let this ruin everything I've worked for." It wasn't a quick fix. It never was. Over the next few days, Lucy spent hours on the phone with the bank, trying to sort through the mess she had created. And as she did, I saw a change in her. She wasn't looking for shortcuts anymore. She was confronting her mistakes, one phone call at a time. That was when I knew, truly knew, that Lucy had begun to understand what it meant to rebuild her life. It wasn't just about getting a job or paying off her debt. It was about acknowledging the full scope of her mistakes and accepting the responsibility for them. She had begun the hard work of restoring her dignity, not by avoiding the consequences, but by facing them head-on. And as the days turned into weeks, I saw more of the woman I had hoped she would become. There were still moments of doubt, moments when she faltered, but she kept going. And that in itself was enough. One evening, after she had returned from a particularly difficult shift, she sat down across from me at the table. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but there was a sense of quiet pride in her eyes. "I did it, Mom," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "I called the bank. They agreed to work with me. It's not going to be easy, but they'll let me pay it off over the next year. I'm going to do it. I'm going to fix everything." I nodded, feeling a small sense of pride myself. "You took responsibility, Lucy, and that's the hardest part. You're on your way now. Keep going." She smiled weakly, her shoulders slumping with relief. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me. I know I've been a mess, but I'm finally starting to see what you meant. It's not just about money. It's about respect. It's about earning it. Earning back the trust I've lost." I reached across the table and took her hand, my heart swelling with a mix of emotions. You're getting it, Lucy, you're finally getting it. The days passed slowly, yet there was an undeniable sense of progress in the house. The tension that had once hung in the air like a dark cloud seemed to have lifted, replaced by a new rhythm. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was real. Lucy was working hard, paying off her debts, and learning what it meant to face the consequences of her actions. I watched her every day, silently proud of the changes she was making. She was no longer the entitled, self-absorbed woman who had walked out on me months ago. She was learning to be accountable, to work for what she wanted, and to take ownership of her mistakes. She wasn't just paying off debt. She was rebuilding her life from the ground up. But despite her progress, there was still an underlying tension, the kind that came from the consequences she had yet to fully face. The apartment building, the properties, the business Carl had built. These things were still unresolved, and deep down, I knew Lucy hadn't fully accepted the extent of what had happened. She still thought there was a way to fix everything, to get back to the life she had once known. It was a conversation I had been avoiding, but I knew it was inevitable. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I knew there was still much to be done. One afternoon, I came home from a short trip to the store and found Lucy sitting at the kitchen table. Her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. She looked up as I entered, her eyes wide with an emotion I couldn't place. "Mom," she said quietly, her voice shaky. I need to talk to you about something. Something important." I set my bag down and sat across from her, sensing the seriousness of the moment. "What is it, Lucy?" She hesitated, glancing down at the papers spread out in front of her. "I've been thinking a lot about the beach house and the apartment building. I know you've been taking care of things with the lawyer, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how to fix what I've done." I took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment I had been preparing for. The truth had to come out, and it would come with consequences. Just like everything else in her life. "Lucy," I began, my voice steady but firm. "You can't fix what you've done by pretending it didn't happen. The beach house, the apartment building, everything that Carl and I worked for, it was never about just money. It was about the life we built, the trust we had, the way we chose to live. And you didn't just sell a house. You sold our history. You sold what was left of our family." Her eyes widened in shock, and I could see the weight of my words sink in. I didn't mean to," she whispered, almost pleading. "I thought it was the right thing to do. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about the things that really mattered. That's the problem, Lucy," I said quietly. "You didn't think. And now it's time to face the consequences. You can't just keep running away from this. You can't keep hiding behind excuses." She looked at me, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I don't know how to fix it, Mom. I don't know how to make up for what I've done. I don't know where to start." I sat there looking at her, letting the silence stretch between us. The reality of the situation was sinking in for both of us. Lucy was no longer the person who thought everything would always come easily. She had learned the hard way that life wasn't about shortcuts. It was about hard work, humility, and the willingness to face the consequences of your actions, no matter how difficult. "You start by accepting what you've done," I said softly. "You start by being honest with yourself. You can't undo the past, but you can build something new from it. It's going to take time, and it's going to be hard, but that's the only way forward." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "I know, Mom. I know I've hurt you. I've hurt all of us. But I'm trying. I really am." "You're doing well, Lucy," I said, my voice warm but steady. "But there's more to do. You need to make things right, not just with the properties, but with the people you've hurt. And that includes me. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, but I'm here for you. But you need to be here for yourself first." She looked up at me, her face filled with both regret and determination. "I will, Mom. I'll fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. I promise." And in that moment, I finally believed her. The weeks following our conversation were filled with hard work and quiet perseverance. Lucy had made up her mind, and I could see it in every action she took. There was no longer any hint of entitlement in her behavior, no illusion that life owed her anything. Every day, she worked tirelessly, juggling her job with the overwhelming pressure of fixing the financial mess she had created. It wasn't easy, nothing worth having ever was, but she was doing it. Slowly, piece by piece, she was putting the pieces of her life back together. She had started by calling the bank again, this time with a determination I hadn't seen in her before. She negotiated a payment plan, one that allowed her to chip away at the debt without falling further into despair. She cut back on luxuries, living frugally in a way that was foreign to her. The clothes she wore were simple, her meals modest. She had learned what it meant to truly work for what she had, and with every paycheck, she paid down her debt a little more. I was watching her from a distance, giving her the space she needed to truly understand the weight of responsibility. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to intervene. Lucy was handling things on her own, and I couldn't help but feel a small sense of pride in that. One afternoon, she came home from work, looking more tired than usual. But there was a glint in her eyes, something that had been missing before. She walked into the kitchen, where I was sitting, and smiled faintly. "Mom," she said softly, "I just got off the phone with the lawyer. They're moving forward with the paperwork for the apartment building. It's going to take time, but I'm starting to get it back. It's not going to be easy, but I'm doing it." I looked at her, surprised. She hadn't told me she was working on that. I could hear the pride in her voice, the sense of accomplishment that she was no longer hiding from her past, but confronting it head-on. "You're taking responsibility, Lucy," I said, my voice steady. "That's the first step. And you're doing it on your own." She nodded, her eyes softening as she sat across from me. "I know I can't undo everything. I know I've hurt people, including you. But I'm trying, Mom, I'm really trying. And I know it's going to take time, but I want to prove that I can fix it. I want to show you that I'm not the person I was." I sat there in silence for a moment, considering her words. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she was finally ready to take ownership of her life, that she was genuinely changing. But I knew it wasn't just about words. It was about actions. It was about the consistency of the effort she put into her recovery. "You've made progress, Lucy," I said finally, my voice soft. "But remember, it's not just about fixing the past. It's about building something new. You're not just reclaiming properties or paying off debt, you're rebuilding trust. And that's the hardest thing to do." She looked at me, nodding slowly. "I know, Mom, and I'm ready to do that. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm going to earn it. I'll earn back the trust I lost." I studied her for a moment, feeling the shift in our relationship. There was a sincerity in her words, something that hadn't been there before. It wasn't a quick fix, and it wasn't going to be easy, but it was real. For the first time in a long time, I felt like Lucy was finally starting to become the person I had always hoped she would be. Not perfect, not without flaws, but someone who was willing to work for redemption, to own up to her mistakes, and to do the hard work of rebuilding her life. The next few weeks were filled with more of the same, long shifts at work, late nights studying financial documents, and constant phone calls with the lawyer, trying to make sure everything was in order. But even amidst the exhaustion, there was a quiet sense of satisfaction in Lucy's eyes. She wasn't just fixing her mistakes. She was learning the value of hard work, humility, and perseverance. One night, as I was finishing up the dishes, Lucy came up behind me and placed a hand on my shoulder. I turned to find her smiling softly, a look of quiet pride on her face. "I did it, Mom," she said, her voice low. I got the last payment settled with the bank. It's not over, but I'm free from the worst of it. I'm not in debt anymore. It feels like I can finally breathe. I nodded slowly, feeling a warmth spread through me. That's a big step, Lucy. You should be proud of yourself, she smiled, though there was still a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. I know I've got a long way to go, but I've learned so much, and I couldn't have done it without you. Without your help. I turned toward her, looking into her eyes for a long moment. Lucy, I've always been here for you, but it's you who's done the work. You're the one who's taken responsibility. And that's something to be proud of. We stood there for a moment, the silence between us comfortable, a far cry from the tension that had once defined our relationship. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we had finally found a way to heal. The months that followed were a testament to Lucy's resilience and determination. Every day, she continued to prove to herself and to me that she was more than the mistake she had made. The debt was paid off, the apartment building was officially back in my name, and Lucy had managed to rebuild her life from the ground up. But beyond the financial accomplishments, what stood out the most was the change in her. The young woman who had once been so self-centered and reckless was now someone I could truly be proud of. We spent more time together in those months than we had in years, talking over cups of tea, walking through the neighborhood, and quietly rebuilding the bonds we had lost. The trust we had once shared was slowly returning, not in grand gestures, but in the small, everyday moments that spoke louder than words. One evening, as we sat on the porch, the sun setting behind us, Lucy turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Mom," she began, her voice soft, "I've been thinking about everything. About the mess I made. About how much I hurt you and everyone else. And I've realized something. All the money in the world can't fix the things I lost. I thought I could buy happiness, buy love, but it doesn't work like that." I watched her, listening intently as she continued. "You are right, Mom," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "It wasn't about the house or the money. It was about respect. It was about trust. And I lost all of that, not just with you, but with myself. And now I'm learning how to rebuild it." Slowly but surely, I smiled softly, feeling a sense of pride fill my chest. "You've come a long way, Lucy, and you're still learning, still growing. But you've already done something important. You've started to believe in yourself again. And that's everything." She nodded, her eyes wet with emotion. I don't think I ever realized how much I needed to face the truth. Not just with you, but with myself. I kept running from it, kept trying to fix everything in the wrong way. But now I see that it's about making things right, one step at a time. I can't change the past, but I can build a future. And that's what I'm doing. I reached over, taking her hand in mine, my heart swelling with a mixture of love and pride. "I'm so proud of you, Lucy. I know it hasn't been easy. But you've learned what so many people never do, that it's not about how far you fall, but how you rise. And you've risen. And that's the most important thing." She squeezed my hand, her grip strong and steady. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm trying. I promise I'm going to keep trying." We sat there for a while, the world around us growing darker as the stars began to appear in the sky. But in that moment, everything felt lighter. The years of pain, the hurt, the loss, they didn't vanish overnight, but they no longer weighed as heavily on our hearts. We had both changed, and while the journey wasn't over, it was no longer a path of destruction and regret. It was a path toward healing, toward redemption, and as I sat there, holding her hand, I knew that no matter what came next, we were finally on the same page. We had both learned to rebuild, to face the truth, and to take responsibility for our actions. The road ahead was still long, but we were walking it together.